Take two.
Yeah, sometimes it takes two.
Yeah. Well, when you clear the room with your flatulence,
Yeah.
we got to just leave, come back in.
It's not usually that. It's usually burping, dude.
That's true.
Let's be honest.
You're the mouth hole.
You're the one with the loose beehole.
That's true.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Hello.
Oh, dear.
How are you?
Where you been, Bill?
It's relax.
I'm doing better. I'm on the other side of. I was basically sick in some manner for all of freaking February almost.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling better. Yeah.
I've had the runny nose for about a month as well.
Yeah.
Might have been 2 months.
Might have been 2. I don't know.
It just sucks.
Yeah. I get confused between a leaky bee and a leaky nose, you know.
I understand.
Yeah, I know you do.
Depends on where you have your nose.
Yeah, you're such an old man. How dare you? You're dirty. So, we got questions again. A lot of questions.
More questions.
A lot of questions.
For a doctor? That's weird.
Yeah. You want to tease something though.
Oh yeah. Olivia sent that idea. Did someone brought that up? I guess, huh?
A couple people.
Yeah.
They want to talk about. We've talked about kind of spine injuries before, neck and low back. I guess we really kind of should talk about spine health. Some prevention stuff, and maybe some stuff. Maybe people are doing some exercises that may be counterproductive for spine health. Sure. The tried and true sit up. I'll just tease that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're about to throw some heat at that.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Yeah, I've had people, how do you train your abs then? I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
That's a whole discussion. Yeah, so we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I think that's a good topic.
So
especially with
preventative health of the neck, spine.
Prehab, we always call it, right? You rehab after an injury. The so-called prehab is to kind of prevent injury, right?
Okay. So that's going to be coming soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we can talk about that. That's a good topic.
Well, it's competition season. It's full-fledged now. Mm-hmm. We got, actually, this coming weekend is like a huge jiu-jitsu weekend. There's 4, I believe, maybe even 5. I know 4 really big events that are coming down the pipe. Super fights that are pay-per-view in Brazil. And then there's the Flow Grappling stuff is on there. Like it's incredible. I think Aiga has another.
I saw the Aiga
one.
Yeah, I always like that one. It's well done.
I will try to reshare on our Instagram the Brazilian one because I didn't even know about this, and then Professor Jan posted it, and I looked through it, and it's a who's who. I mean, this is a sick card.
Nice.
So I'll put that on our Instagram.
Okay.
Who's that with?
I don't remember. It was a brand or a event that I had never heard of.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Do you know who's in the Aiga lineup?
I don't. It's not Moldolfo's team.
Oh, okay.
Or the Acai Republic that had the other like superstar team. Okay. But if you like grappling, they're going to be doing another thing.
I like that.
Production's good.
The format's cool.
Yeah, the rule set and format's
I like
cool.
it.
Team style.
Yep.
But with it being competition time, we've had some people actually ask that, they're not pro grapplers. They have limited time to train. Mm-hmm. Locally, we have a pretty big tournament coming up on April 6th.
Yeah, the Rev.
Yeah, so a little bit more than a month out.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you recommend? I'll give my 2 cents too, on people that don't have a tremendous amount of time. So maybe for whatever reason, work, new kids, whatever.
What belt level?
Because
that matters.
Yes. Let's start with white and blue.
Perfect.
They have maybe only like an hour, let's say, to train. Okay.
Weekly?
No, like let's say they can do a couple sessions a week.
Okay.
But it's kind of a limited window.
Gotcha.
Right? First, do you recommend that they go to the class portion or the open mat portion? Now, some gyms don't, like, for example, our gym, we do an hour of quote unquote class, which has some situational sparring, has technique, warm up. And then after we do about an hour to hour and a half of just sparring, which is like open mat essentially, right? Where you can work on stuff on your own. You can just roll, whatever.
So the scenario is this person has either or. They can't do.
Yeah, they have a window of about an hour that they can train.
That's a really good question with that scenario.
Yeah.
about a month out, you're not going to be picking up a lot of new techniques that soon. That
goes into our next question.
Okay.
But keep going.
So that's number one. Mm-hmm. You want to sharpen what you have and get, have at least, especially, and I can't emphasize this enough, the stand-up portion matches are almost can be dictated from that initial
an early score or something.
So I would talk to your professor and say, hey, this is what I'm concerned about. Maybe there's a little impromptu competition kind of that they can divide up. And like, hey, like we have that separate back mat space. And if someone is that limited, for instance, let's say we had 2 or 3 folks that had that very scenario that they just could not make it more than that. I certainly, as a black belt, would be willing to go back, of course, talk to your professor first. Don't be completely disrespectful. Let them know, like, hey, we're going to do kind of a tune-up before. And you could almost hold like a separate little section. But do it quasi-organized. Have a game plan. Have someone that can work with you. And make the most out of that. You don't have to have, if you have a wrestling background, that's one thing. You already have a big advantage, right? Or a judo background. But, work on, like we worked on in class, some, not just guard pulls to safety, guard pulls to attack position. Really set yourself up for success for an early sweep or an attack. I would definitely start working that. And then kind of sharpen you're not going to be able to plan play by play because we know that never works, right? But you want to sharpen the stuff. You don't want to get stuck in side control for the whole match. You don't want to have someone lock their closed guard on you and you got to get stalled out there, right? So you want to work with an upper belt that has, if you have a glaring weakness in just the fundamental stuff, I would start working that with someone. And it might be a better use of your time, but again, it's going to be depending on your professor and all that. Certainly kind of talk about it ahead of time. But that would be a good use of time, I think, when you're that close, when you're about a month out or so. And if you only had an hour.
Yeah. So you're leaning towards the normal class time, but try to talk to your professor, see if you can, if they mind, or with an upper belt or something that you can kind of go over and like kind of zero in on a game plan and stuff like that.
Or the open mat time, but just talk to someone ahead of time that you can kind of almost run like a mini little competition. Drilling, a
little camp or something.
In the open mat time, if you only had, that 1 hour, it depends on the situation in the academy. But that's what and get with someone that, can really get an honest assessment and give you some good feedback, and don't try to reinvent the wheel when you're a month out. Right. So, have something from the feet that you can go to, and then sharpen up some of the stuff that we always see in comp, especially at the white belt level, right? Someone gets locked in closed guard and or,
side control or something like that.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think, yes, and part of the reason that you're talking to your instructor to just kind of like let them, especially if you're going to do it during the normal class, or at least experiment with that.
Especially,
is just because sometimes, it can look a little like, I know more than you. I think this is better for me than what you're teaching.
That's right.
You don't want it to come off that way. That's not what you're saying. You understand that you have a limited amount of time, and if they're in the middle of doing, butterfly stuff for the first time that you're really learning, that's not really your game. It's not going to become your game in the next month.
Right.
So you're just zeroing in on something. Your coach would probably appreciate it, most likely.
Yeah.
But definitely being upfront, I think, is good. If I had to pick one, I would lean towards the second hour.
Yeah.
I would lean towards the quote unquote open mat time, because you will be able, most likely, to kind of do both. You'll be able to grab someone, get some drilling in, at this point, you probably don't need to be doing too much passive drilling. You're probably going to want some resistance, almost situational style.
For sure. I would recommend that.
And then getting into situational sparring, and then open rounds to really hone in your cardio. if your hour is spent in the normal class, there's probably a pretty good chance you're not going to be able to really tax your cardio too much and like keep that to a high level.
Yep.
Which in competition, especially at the lower belts, you're going to feel, your arms are going to feel different than you've ever felt before. Yeah. if you've never competed.
Yeah, you get that adrenaline dump too.
Oh, jeez. And then the blood rushes to them because you're over gripping. That just happens. Happens even above blue belt, really.
Oh, yeah.
But
it sure does.
I would lean towards the second hour.
Yeah, I think that's the better use of the time, and you'll have more availability of some folks to help you out too.
For sure.
And you don't have to worry as much about it. It's not as I don't know. It comes across as less disrespectful, but still, you don't want to just show up for open mat too.
Yeah. You kind of conveying that.
Let your professor know what you're planning on doing. Hey, look, this is a situation. I have such limited time, but I really want to.
I still want to be in here. I still want to compete, and I still want to get my work in.
And that being said, when you get a week before, you really need to taper that back. And a lot of people
saying intensity of sparring,
intensity of the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah.
You want to be fresh going into your competition, not beat up.
Yeah, when I'm a week out, I like to keep, so I will keep up some intensity, but it's in very specific kind of moments. I'm staying away from the scrambles. I feel like those are when I tweak something the most, is off some sort of transitional scrambling, like dogfight kind of thing. Not the position dogfight.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. But I can at least still work movement with 70% intensity going against me and 70-ish% going out. But once again, in a situational format. So if I'm going to go for headquarters, let's say, that's going to be my where I go for my passing. I want to still get reps in that last week of just getting into it, holding it. The guy on bottom is maybe giving me a 70% effort on like moving me around and stuff. And at least I'm just working on my static stuff, my pins and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily working on throwing up my triangle and then having someone like stack me and stuff like that. I'm really working on my pinning in the last week.
And your breathing.
Yes.
Huge.
Still getting sweats in, but it's like you're lowering the impact.
And you know what I mean by working on breathing.
Some people
are just,
like people need to challenge themselves. So let's say we're a month to a month and a half out. You need to start challenging yourself yesterday on only breathing through your nose during your sparring and situational, and honestly, even drilling. Like make it so your default is breathing through your nose. It will literally change your game. Like to the point where you don't even realize that you're breathing through your nose, like down the line.
Well, there's something physiological about that. It's probably a different topic if you want me to go into that a little bit, why that's important.
A little bit, yeah.
So the nose is interesting. When you breathe through your nose, you actually get part of the nasal epithelium back in the what we call the nasopharynx, where the nose goes back into the throat. It actually produces nitric oxide. And breathing through the mouth, you don't really get that. Nitric oxide is a bronchodilator too. Okay. In other words, it will open up your lungs some.
Interesting.
Over breathing through your mouth, you actually breathe off too much CO2. People have always seen that, when you over breathe, you get a little tingly, your lips can get all, So when you CO2 is also a bronchodilator.
It's kind of with like runners and stuff, right?
Yeah,
like,
you start breathing out.
Those,
well, you can start to get a little bronchoconstriction too if you breathe off too much CO2, right? It's counterintuitive, but you can breathe off too much carbon dioxide. So the nose is the great regulator of that. Yeah, so it's good stuff. A really good book on this stuff is by James Nestor. It's called Breathe.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah,
so.
You've mentioned that a few times in the past. And I think I've heard maybe some other like podcasts talk about that. That's a really good book.
It's excellent. So.
So starting your breathing stuff now immediately will it can be a game changer for sure. It'll keep you calm also, right? Because I think we've talked about the fight or flight thing.
That's right.
When we start breathing through our mouth and we're like, our neck starts to get more
So
tense.
those are called accessory breathing muscles, right? And you start using your neck muscles and all that to elevate your rib cage. You know, that is the full-on flight or fight. And that's tied into norepinephrine, epinephrine, the adrenaline response, right?
Yeah.
Where nasal breathing, in general, diaphragmatic breathing is more in line with parasympathetic or, kind of decreasing the flight or fight.
It's interesting when back in the many moons ago, I had done speed training for like running and sprinting and stuff like that for baseball and football. And I remember when I was doing these speed training, like it's just for sprinting and running basically. The hardest thing was the guy was trying to get us when we would run is have this like droopy face.
That's right.
Where like no constriction of our jaw.
Relaxed.
And it's so hard when you're used to sprinting, you're
I know.
gritting and like,
That's right.
Gotta run as hard as you can. But it was, we literally spent like a couple hours of getting used to running where our faces are just jiggling. And then he showed us video of Olympic sprinters and collegiate sprinters when it's slow mode, and their lips and faces are just as they're, the fastest people in the world.
Yeah. Well, and they're really tying into efficiency and not in because that the jaw clenching, the tight, this whole accessory that is such an energy bleed. For sure. So that coach was ahead of his time.
Remember in Ace Ventura when he's like,
yes.
remember that?
Yeah.
One of the best scenes ever.
Yeah.
You just wanted to do it.
Yeah. Well, he's got a tutu on,
Yeah.
and then he like gets on his knees and just. So I couldn't do that part. I've tried that before. It didn't work out.
Yeah. Jim Carrey was amazing.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, that goes into at what point, if you have a competition coming up, any belt level, you have, let's say, brown down. You have a competition coming up, whether that's 3 months, 2 weeks, whatever. At what point do you stop trying to add new stuff and you start drilling down on what you're going to do?
A month.
About 4-ish weeks.
That's what I think.
At that point, you stop trying to do new stuff.
Yep.
You're shrinking jiu-jitsu down. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this. This is my stand-up strategy and game plan. I got to take down, depending on your skill level. Like if you're a white or blue belt, you're not, so let's say a brown belt, he might have an Asotogari, he might have a Sumigashi, he might have an ankle pick, he might have a swing single, right? Your brown and purples might have that. Your blue and whites, you might just have your Asoto and an ankle pick, right? You might just have a guard pull.
Well, absolutely. That's right.
So at that point, you're shrinking down about a month out to like, you know what? Every round, I'm going to go for that.
The upper belt should start chaining some of those, depending on what they are, how well they flow into each other. A lot of these things are very amenable to ankle picks too, especially some of the judo stuff.
Yeah. And so are you identifying a month out game plan and like what your go-tos are going to be?
Yeah.
Or are you doing that even earlier?
No, I mean, you shouldn't. I think 4 weeks is a good time to stop trying to do new skill acquisition. I think before that, certainly, but identify kind of your A game, things you already have down fairly decently, have some motor skills with them, and sharpen, and do them as live with a little stress behind it as you can.
Some people, they worry that if they chain a couple competitions together, that whole time, let's say they have 2 comps that are 3 months apart, there's not a lot of time to gain new skill, right? So they did a month lead up to the first comp, and they zeroed in and they did their go-to, their A game, and then they only got basically, let's call it a month and a half or so to do new skill acquisition. And then now they're back into their A game.
It doesn't mean you can't do new skill acquisition. It's just that it's likely not going to be uploaded to the point where that's become part of your A game for competition.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's exceptions to that. People are like, well, I just watched something on YouTube the night before and hit it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
In general.
I totally agree. I think a month out is pretty good. I also think, like, for the person that is chaining competitions, like, use the competition as your pressure test for your new technique. So let's say you did that first comp, you let up, you had your A game built in, you executed however you did. And now you only got a month and a half until you start having to prep again. In that month and a half, tell yourself, okay, like, this is where it takes some organization too. And saying, I want to be able to do a balloon sweep. I want to have a nasty daily heat, deep daily heat, daily X, like a new position for you. For that month and a half, you're not, like, you're just doing that. Like, it's almost, you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it with something new. So by the time it comes to the 4-week period,
Right.
you're going to know, like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to try hitting that damn thing.
Add that to your
So now you have another 4 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to have that A game from the last tournament.
Yeah.
It's not going to be super rusty. You'll still touch on it in the 4 weeks lead up. But now you have another tool that you could potentially sharpen in that amount of time. And if you really drill down and you're annoyingly consistent by going for the same thing, that tool is going to be good.
Exactly, but you hit that's the comment I was going to make. Don't get too broad with your new skill acquisition. Be very focused on, hey, I really want to add this to my game, whatever that is.
And those timelines can really actually be helpful because you're kind of putting the pressure on yourself to be like,
I got to work this, you know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree with the 4-week thing, though, that's a good time to, especially, you know, and I guess it also might depend a little bit about how much you train. If you train a couple times a week plus 4 weeks, if you're competing and you only come in once a week, that's awesome. I think that's great. You might want to zero in a little further out. If they're like a once to maybe twice a week person that trains.
That's tough too.
That's really tough
because you know, you're building on those skills like once a week. Not that you can't. I mean, you do what you can do, right? I'm not saying not to, but it's a lot harder because you're not getting a lot of reinforcement.
Yeah.
You're not getting enough looks probably.
Yeah. I mean, try to do anything once a week.
Up to preparing for competition. Yeah.
Learn a language or whatever.
So, you know, it just, you know, you want.
I would probably be supplementing at home a bit with visual stuff. So if, let's say, your game is a spider lasso, I'm going to be watching Shane Jamil Taylor. You know, at home, even though I'm not training, I'm at least watching a match or two of his every other night.
And also we talked about visualizations before too, right? Where you can kind of, as in much detail as you possibly can, walking through each of these
You're in the shower,
and stuff. Yeah.
Just kind of like imagine yourself doing this stuff and being successful with it, and just put those visuals in your mind. It's like a way you can kind of train if you have limited training time.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think it works. Even the like positive self-talk, which I'm like probably the worst at. Me and you are like very bad at that.
Yeah, I'm not good.
With like talking to yourself like, I'm good, or whatever you're saying.
Yeah.
But I know when I have done that a little bit, it does make a difference when you're like talking yourself up and bringing confidence and developing a little bit of an ego. You need ego. You need a little bit.
You're competing.
Yes,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the time where we're going in now. You know, I think it goes without saying, you don't need to bring that ego after your match,
right?
One way or the other,
right.
Especially when if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, then you beat yourself up about it. That's just not helpful.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. Going into, it's more of a confidence thing, trying to develop, trying to go in with some confidence.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting if people have questions about their competitions coming up. We'd love to chat about those. I love talking about competition stuff and like the mentality and stuff because, as I've said, I'm a mental midget, so I've had to like really dig deep into my own emotions, and
I think it's tough for everyone.
yeah.
And Andrew always says, the competition is a skill itself.
Right.
Where the more you compete, then it becomes like a day at the office as opposed to like this huge.
That's the only reason I've been competing so much is literally because mentally I struggle with it so much. And I hear Craig Jones talk about that too. That like he's almost too calm now. And it's like I want that. I want to be able to just, you know what? I'm going to do a competition next week and not feel the crazy, like everyone's going to have nerves. That's fine. That's good. That's preparing us with energy. But I want to be able to like perform at my best of my abilities and not be hindered by nerves and the desire to like not show up because I'm nervous or something like that.
In a little added, yes, absolutely. And a little added tidbit, since we're talking about competition, is don't go into your match cold.
Oh,
work up a light sweat.
Literally.
A lot of people think, I don't want to expend energy. You got to get that nervous system somewhat ready. So get a light sweat. Get someone you can kind of do some, even if it's just like fit drills.
I even go a little bit more extreme. I do like to actually get like I won't say heavy sweat, but a decent sweat going. Not right before, but I want to say probably 15 minutes before. I like to get where I'm sweating pretty good. And then I'm letting the blood cook because typically that's where I'll feel my nerves and all that kind of stuff. And then the nerves, they kind of got worked out a little bit. I catch my breath a little bit. Okay, I've calmed down, but I still have that little bit of lather. And then as they call the name, or I see my name on the list of like I'm gonna have to like go into the bullpen, I'll start getting the heart rate up again a little bit, get the muscles going, get the blood flow going, and then I'm ready to go. I totally agree. Unfortunately, Andrew and I both at the last tournament,
I know.
And Olivia.
That was terrible.
Olivia's first freaking tournament. And they just sprung on us like, okay, call.
And you're like, what?
Yeah, we were the first matches of the tournament.
That was it, because it's the first matches of the tournament. Yeah.
And Andrew and I both, we did like 10 push-ups.
I know.
And then waited and then walked out
and
there.
You're like, all right, let's go.
And then Olivia, she's poor gal. She's freaking first tournament. She's watching me compete. And then as soon as I finish, I run over to her mat for her to compete. And she's, so.
Yeah, it doesn't always work, but if it's a well-run tournament,
if you can control it, and really that was a big thing. Was on our side. We just showed up a little later than we should have.
It's hard to say though, man.
Yeah. So we actually had another question come in, and it was kind of more of a comment, I guess. So this guy, he says he's 49. He's got all the symptoms of low testosterone, which obviously makes jiu-jitsu brutal. He says, I'm in Canada though. And when I had my levels checked a couple of years ago by my doctor, they said they were normal. And that was basically the end of the discussion. But once again, he's going off of how he feels. He listens to this podcast.
Totally.
He hears us talk about it in our therapy. And I'm sure plenty of other people. So he said, any advice? And also, just a side note, his nutrition is on point.
Yeah, man. Oh, man, I feel bad for you because it sucks, especially at 49. Yeah, I don't want to say, oh, well, freaking, he's in a bad situation there because I don't live in Canada. People I've talked to said it's not the best for individualized medicine. I actually there's some Canadians that come down to see my wife, believe it or not, that have family down here. And when they're down visiting in Washington, they go see Carrie for things just like this. Right. Yeah, it's really, I'm sure you can have everything dialed in great. Jiu-jitsu is tough on the body.
Yeah.
And a 49-year-old, I'm 54 myself. I just, I could not hang if I didn't restore my testosterone levels. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't.
Since you started jiu-jitsu, have you had any long gaps in therapy?
No, but I'll tell you the story. So I started TRT about 6 months after I started jiu-jitsu, and I have started at 45 years old as a white belt, right? And I was I did mountain biking, rock climbing, stuff like that. And I'm like, I noticed my recovery. Okay, it's not quite as good, but I was still doing pretty well.
Yeah. You were very active.
Right.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu took that to a level where it exposed the deficiency. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Where if I was in my early 30s, I would have been like, oh, wow, this is tough, but I'll adapt to it, right?
Yeah.
6 months in, I'm like, this is not sustainable for me. It just isn't. I was wrecked. Like one class would wreck me for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
My muscle soreness, the just fatigue. I mean, my nervous system was like, okay, I don't know what you're doing, but this isn't mountain biking right? And so that was the impetus for me to actually finally go because I knew it was low, but that was that pushed me to actually go get treated
and start.
Because it would not have been sustainable for me, man. And I feel for you. I don't have a good answer for you. The problem is
because of where he lives.
Well, and even in the States, man, it's still hard to find someone that won't just be like treat your lab value. I'm like, oh, you're good.
Yeah.
I don't want to go off.
Squeeze your finger.
You're going to get me all fired up like I did last week, right? But it's the state of medicine. We're treating lab values and not people, and it sucks for him, man, because I don't care if you do the Tangat Ali or you do all this stuff. You could try all these things, but man, at a certain level, the evolutionary part of being a human is nature doesn't give a shit about us after reproductive age. They're really the human organism, as far as an organism, I'm not talking about the spiritual aspects and all that, is there to pass on genes during reproductive years and
carry on the human race.
Right. And then after that, you can go off and get shoved off on an iceberg somewhere. Nature doesn't give a shit about you.
I've tried to do that to you so many times.
I know. But
you're stingy.
Well, and I've replaced my hormones, so
that's true.
You'd have a difficult time.
You're strong.
Yeah. So
I'm just imagining this battle.
Me pushing him and him not allowing.
And knowing my facility in the water, you'd probably be in big trouble.
That's true.
Have you seen
Bill
Step Brothers?
Would be in big trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, I would cry.
Yeah.
Have you seen Step Brothers?
Yeah.
I'm pouring dirt on you after I
know.
threw you in the grave.
The problem is we're by water, and I would F you up.
Yeah. You'd pull me in and I'd be dead.
Yeah.
Basically.
We would.
You get out and just let the water take me.
That's right.
So that would Bill wouldn't get near a glacier.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
That wouldn't work for you though. But anyway, my point of that is, those of us that are past our prime reproductive years that, by the way, also want to still do a lot of the stuff that we enjoy doing in our 20s and 30s. There's some great things about modern medicine, and one of them is hormone replacement.
Yeah.
Not steroids, but replacing what you lost, right? And man, it just sucks. I don't know if you can look around. I don't know. I'm just talking out of school here because I don't know the laws in Canada about that. I don't know if there's other practitioners outside the system you could go seek.
Is that website that we've mentioned before that has a lot of integrated? Does that go into Canada?
I don't know. And so that's the thing.
That's like,
you're talking about the Institute of Functional Medicine?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Google that.
A good functional medicine practitioner usually does hormones really well.
Yeah.
But
we just don't know if
I just don't know. I don't know what's
I
don't know what's available, and can you go out? I just don't know enough about their healthcare system. But if you have the opportunity to actually go find someone, like even when we talked about last time, even if it's a 2-hour drive, it's worth it because then you can go get evaluated, and you only have to go once or twice a year.
Yep.
So man, I would look around into that because, if you were like, I'm doing I'm not saying any of these other sports are easy.
Right.
But what jiu-jitsu does to your body, especially on almost 50-year-old, you just need the recovery. It's really rough otherwise. And you'll find yourself getting more and more under-recovered until the wheels fall off. And that's just, and there's some people out there that are just freaks that maintain good, you know, whatever. The outliers, but in general. So I don't have a lot of, except for really doing a hard search and see if you can find someone that can help you. Besides, I don't know if you're assigned to primary care and that's all you got. Like, sorry, you're only eating at Taco Bell. Well, I don't like Taco Bell. Too bad. That's where you're eating. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's like that.
Yeah. Because their system is different.
Yeah. So
this is Bill talking, not Chris, but there is that YouTuber, More Plates, More Dates. I'm not supporting him, but I would look into, he's Canadian. And once again, this is me, not Chris talking. Because, I know he has a company that looks into a lot of like men's hormones and stuff. Once again, I don't know if I know he's Canadian. We don't know if the company is Canadian or how they can serve you. I don't even know if they're super quality. I know he seems to be pretty good, as in the knowledge that he has and the stuff he talks about at times is good. You're going to have to do some research, though.
But I will tell you, TRT is a game changer for the 50-year-old in jiu-jitsu.
And so I've been on testosterone since my mid-20s.
Which you're a big outlier.
Yeah. There's obviously I have my wires are
we don't have to go into medical stuff. Yeah.
I have my own issues there that has caused that to where my first time I tested, and it was before my mid-20s that I was having issues, like, because when I look back at symptoms, I just thought I was a big fat pussy. I thought I was just fat and stupid, and maybe I was some of that, but I thought,
sorry.
You burping in my face again?
I did. I'm so sorry.
And then you waved it to me.
I don't want it.
I thought he was being nice and trying to say, "Oh, you're not fat and stupid."
I know.
No, he was just
I was
burping.
wafting.
Wafting is cockmouth. Sorry.
Oh,
hey,
Bill.
I didn't mean that.
Your mother.
Oh, damn it. So I've been on since then, and I've been on and off at times. I've gone off at times when for various reasons. And so I kind of know the feeling that you're going through when it comes to, and I've been off it during my jiu-jitsu journey as well, and it is incredibly hard. Now the only way I pushed through it and still trained a lot, I think, was because I had dealt with low testosterone like a large portion of my adult life, so I kind of have been able to navigate it.
And you were still relatively young for other parts of your physiology.
Right. So
that makes a difference too.
Yeah, I didn't have a body in my 40s and low testosterone.
Right.
I'm in my 30s, early 30s even, and whether 20s and all that. So, it sucks, man. I wish we had a better answer.
I do too, and I'm sure you have everything dialed in, nutrition, sleep, the whole 9 yards. It's just
we talk about some of the natural stuff. I think in episode 10, the testosterone episode.
Yeah, Carrie talked about some of the stuff.
Yeah, pine pollen, nettle root extract, tonkat ali. Like we talked about a ton of these things. I know Chris Williams. Hey, you know that podcast?
Of course.
I don't know if. I saw a clip. I don't know if the episode is out because he'll put out clips before the big episode. I don't know who he was talking to. I would do a little research if you can. He talked about how he naturally raised his testosterone all the way up to 800. So, now, he wasn't in like the twos or anything.
Yeah, but he's like 36 years old.
I was going to say, how old is he?
For sure.
He's mid-30s.
For sure.
Yeah.
He obviously takes care of himself and all that. I'm just saying he's mentioned tonkat ali and a couple other natural things that he had done. This is just part of the research stuff that just pointing you in the right direction, that if you are so limited that you, unfortunately, because of where you live, you can't find some of these remedies, that maybe there's some information that you can get to via more natural.
Oh man, that just
which is like a dumb way to say it, because
The problem is the body only has some capacity to produce what, even with a little prodding, to produce what it can produce.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It might make a little bump, but I can tell you there's nothing like replacing what you lost.
For sure. Because I had, all right success with the natural remedies. I went up a couple hundred testosterone.
How did you feel though?
I still wasn't to the point of, honestly, it wasn't even close.
Well, you look at what's quote unquote normal ranges for total testosterone. They're super low is at the bottom end of it, right? Like in the 200s and stuff. It's like, dude.
Yeah.
That's something me and Bill were actually talking about the other day is how individual that is, like the fill, like with hormones, like one person could be good at 450 and another person's like, I need to be at 850.
Well, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
About, androgen receptor resistance, all kinds of sex hormone binding globulin, all kinds of other things that feed into that.
To why they would need, someone may need more because of the resistance to the
more or less. So,
There's all kinds of
sensitivity or whatever.
little things. Some we can't test for.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So sorry, brother. Hopefully, if you find something, if you do your own research and you find something in Canada that oh no, we can do this or this, would love to know any sort of information.
Yeah, I would, because I just am ignorant about the ins and outs of the system up there.
Yeah. Another question came in, and he says I am a older blue belt in my gym at the ripe age of 34 years old. So me and him started about the same time. I think I was 34, right, Leo? 34, 35 I started?
Yeah.
Yeah, right in there. I said I just got my blue belt and having only been training for 7 months. That's pretty freaking fast.
That's super impressive.
Yeah. I only know a couple people that have done that. He says, I don't think I am ready for my blue belt. Yeah, all the blue belts that have been blue belts in for over a year all said it was about time I got it so they could feel better rolling with them.
Yeah.
Right?
We've had people come in general, they'll come in with some other type of the classic is the wrestler comes in.
Sure.
Not everyone.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably most stereotypical, like a fast path to blue.
Or a judo black belt.
Yeah. So I mentioned that comment because he actually made another comment, and he says he lives in North Dakota, and he has similar problems. He was talking about one of our TRT episodes. And he says, I just don't know if TRT is for me. So the reason I mentioned the previous comment is because he's a little bit newer to jiu-jitsu, just to add context, and he's 34, and he's not sure if TRT is for him.
Why would he want it? Why was he even thinking about it?
Yeah, that's kind of my thought.
In general, except for an outlier like the people do have primary hypogonadism, from different reasons. They're just not producing. It's fairly rare, but it absolutely, I'm looking at one person it's happened to. But TRT is nothing to mess around with. I mean, if you have, you should not look at it as like a performance enhancer at all. It's completely replacement. Now, if you truly have some kind of deficiency in the system, I'm not talking about just the numbers, right? If there's something not working correctly, that's one thing, but not just like, it shouldn't be for you. It's for most 34-year-olds, that shouldn't be something that many of them need or should do.
Yeah.
So I would have to know a whole lot of more information and ask a bunch more questions about that.
And really, like, this is something that I didn't treat very seriously when I started, and then for the first probably like 8 years or so, was once you're on it, you want to stay on it. Like this yo-yo on and off thing.
Well, is for sure, and you got to have a reason to be on it. And oh, by the way, when you go on it, it can certainly affect fertility. Right? There are some downsides to it. Yeah. Especially in it's usually in pretty prime reproductive age. Right now. Yeah.
So I would be interested to hear like why you're
because I've said this like a broken record. It's testosterone replacement therapy. That's what TRT means. It's not testosterone addition therapy.
Yeah. And if I'm spitballing here, I'm just kind of assuming a little bit that maybe he has some symptoms, right? Maybe there's a sleep element, maybe there's an energy element.
Sure.
And this is what a good naturo or integrated medicine, functional medicine doctor is going to do, and they're going to ask you about your lifestyle.
and they can look at actually all the things that are involved with that entire system, not just at the level of the as the testicles producing, but your hypothalamus, your pituitary, everything that is going to producing stuff.
Exactly, and that was a big difference from when I went from UW medicine and Swedish and all that kind of stuff to a good functional medicine doctor, Dr. Carrie Hardy, is they looked at my total test, and that was it, and then made their decision on what my dosage should be, and then Carrie looked through all of that.
Yeah, she looked at your whole profile.
It was a why. Why are you having 30 something,
exactly,
20 something?
And that was my point.
Yeah.
Why is that happening to you? Why do you have a failure to produce at that level and at that age?
And that's where, for this guy, it sounds like, I'm just assuming, might not have the numbers available, and he's just going off a feel. And that's where, once again, it still goes down to, like, what's your lifestyle looking like? I mean, to as simple as you always talk about, nervous system, fried foods, inflammatory foods, sugar intake.
Yep. Alcohol.
Huge.
Big
alcohol.
Time. Big time.
I mean, talk about, you're literally kicking your testosterone in the nuts.
Yeah.
With alcohol.
Yeah, pretty much.
In more ways than one.
That's exactly right. So, to answer your question, it shouldn't be for most 34-year-olds.
Yeah. But if you got more information, would love to have it come in.
Good.
Another question, but this time off of TRT. This one threw me for a loop.
So it's not TRT this time?
It's not TRT.
God, okay, good.
So this one had to do with someone made a comment about this was on our staph infection, MRSA, ringworm, and how to treat it episode, which for newer listeners, we have an episode. Actually, I got it right here. Episode 19. If you're interested in learning a little bit about staph and MRSA and all that garbage that we run into on the grappling mats, episode 19, we do a deep dive into all that stuff, treatment, preventative care, all that good stuff. But a comment came in. It says, I overuse defense soap, because we mentioned defense soap is good to have like as your standard after training soap. Good brand. He says, overusing defense bath soap actually caused a staph flare-up for me.
Yeah. So
in my monkey brain, I say, what?
Yeah. So when you overuse any kind of soap, I would say, probably defense is a little better because it has some of the oils in it too, like some of the antimicrobial oils.
Yeah.
But if you I don't know what he's doing to overuse soap in general. No, I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, I'm curious, because what happens is you can really make your skin dry. You can disrupt the natural oil production. Is that due
to scrubbing, or is
the soap itself?
Okay.
Yeah, soap is a surfactant.
What?
Yeah. So when you make soap is really interesting. So let's think about something. If I had a pot that I put water in, and I have a thin layer of olive oil, like on top, let's say that I cooked spaghetti or something, and I put water in the pot to wash it, but I noticed that there's a thin layer of oil on the top.
Okay.
If you put a drop of soap in there, what happens to that oil? You ever watched it? It disperses.
Okay.
So soap in general has what's called a hydrophilic end, which means it likes water, and a hydrophobic end, which goes away from water and likes to bind with fats.
Okay.
And oils are a fat. So what happens is the way soap works is the tail piece that likes the fat or oils will interact with it, and then the other end that is water loving will glom onto the water, so that water will wash away. Like if I had a bunch of oil on me, yeah. So that's how soap works. And so if you are overdoing it on any type of soap, you'll dry out your skin. You'll pull all your natural oils. Oils are and part of your epidermis too. part of it, it's a natural barrier to infection. So, and that's where the rest of your skin flora lives too. So your skin flora is very important. We have billions of bacteria all over our skin. And when you wipe out a lot of them, it will allow some that are resistant to overgrow. And if you have dry skin due to over cleansing, you can then create little breaks in the barrier. Then will allow actually opportunistic infection
cracking
to happen.
Or something.
Yeah, and microscopic level, but it doesn't take much to have a bacteria set up shop, right?
Huh.
So not just defense soap, okay? It's also why people don't, they don't, remember we had all those, the soaps with the antibiotics in them?
Yes.
We stopped doing that.
Right.
It's a problem. It's not only for us, but also washing that stuff. It creates antimicrobial resistance because you have so much of that stuff around, it selects for the things that are resistant. But in this case, I think it's over washing in general. It could have been with any soap. I would, it's not unique to defense soap. So I think when you use it after training. And what I do in the shower, well, I'll tell you what, here's a good point though. So when I'm not training, like I get up in the morning and take a shower, I wash my hair and my pits, include, genital area, but armpits, and I don't sit there and just scrub the rest of my body. Okay. Unless I have some obvious dirt on there.
Sure.
You don't need to. Typically, water saying wash off, unless you're about. You got dirt all over you or whatever, right? Sure. But yeah, so I don't sit there and scrub every inch of my body. Now after training, I will kind of
like a lather everywhere.
Wash it, yeah. But I don't scrub the heck out of myself either.
It's like Mr. Deeds when the guy's soaping his ass.
Very good. That's a good one.
I'm thinking of you right now.
Okay, I appreciate it. But I would say that's probably what's going on. It's overdoing it with not only defense soap, but any soap in general.
So it's not the actual scrubbing motion. It's just the
overuse. It could be too. Yeah, because it could be the scrubbing as well too, because it's disrupting the barrier. Depends on how vigorous you're scrubbing.
Interesting.
I have a question. Let's just say it's because they train a couple times a day. Let's say.
Okay.
And so would them using like a Lubriderm or a CeraVe on their skin afterwards help to repair, replenish the barrier moisture?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
But I really am careful not to disrupt, a lot of the natural oils of the skin anyway.
But it's interesting because I'll train twice a day, and I won't have that. I use defense soap typically. Sometimes we use, what's the other soap? Is that just like homemade?
My mom makes it.
Yeah, but it has tea tree and stuff like that. But that's kind of interesting.
But also the scrubbing motion, I think there is something to that. What are you using to, are you exfoliating your skin like basically every time you take a shower?
I think we've talked about this. If, let's say you do get an infection, and you can tell, like, let's say the infection is on your forearm. Does that mean that's where it went? Like you contracted, like could you contracted it through an open wound on your foot and then it manifests there?
No.
Oh, I thought it was the opposite of that.
No, you'll get it. It will first come up where it had the port of entry, so to speak.
Really?
Yeah.
So if you got it on your inner chest, that's
where you're going to see it.
If it manifested there,
that's right.
That's where it went in.
Yeah.
No
That's where the break in the skin was.
I told the wrong.
Because if think about it. If it has spread that far elsewhere from the initial site, you're in big trouble. How did it spread?
Well, that's for someone else to answer.
No, my point. No, that's not what I'm saying. I mean, physically, how did it get from one spot to the other? Through the bloodstream? That ain't good.
I was going to say that'd be bad.
Probably
really bad. Yeah. Through the skin?
Yeah.
That's cellulitis.
Like there would be a trail.
Totally, dude. And that's what we look out for when an infection is actually worsening, is we look for the spread. Matter of fact, when Carrie has someone that we're watching like a localized infection, she'll have them draw with a a marker around the border.
Oh, she had me do that when I had one on my knee.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if it starts spreading outside the border, that's hurt. Then she's like, okay, what we're doing topically is not working. We probably need to do oral antibiotics.
That's right. She said in 2 days, let me know if it hasn't shrunk or if it got outside the
especially those ones that are like infected hair follicles, the folliculitis that turns into what we call a furuncle, which is basically this really pus-filled little bump.
Yeah, it's kind of stiff.
Yeah, and then people try to squeeze on them, and it drives the infection deeper into the dermis, and then you start getting subcutaneous spread.
That was huge information that when you guys told me that. This is years ago. Because I kept having little, like almost like infections on my knees. And leave the jokes at home, boys. I don't need to hear it. And what was I talking about?
The not like the
squeeze it. Yeah. I didn't know that by quote unquote popping them or whatever, you're pushing it deeper into the tissue and it literally makes it worse.
Now, that's with direct, like you're squeezing.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you can, with sterile procedure, you can actually unroof the thing,
like your knife or something.
Yeah, a little, or even we sometimes use my knife.
I was thinking a pocket knife.
No, lick it off. We're good.
Cut my butter with it. And
then here we go. Or we use like a little cutting needle, a needle, like a larger 18 or 16 gauge needle, and kind of unroof it and try to.
Yeah, so I used a safety pin before.
Yeah, but you got to be careful with that too.
Right. Well, I mean, it was on the bathroom counter.
I was going to say, that was not sterilized.
Yeah. So
the dog was chewing.
You got to be, So that kind of stuff. Yeah. So no, it will start at the site of entry.
But it made it so when I stopped doing that to him, the healing process was so much faster.
Yeah.
Leave the damn thing alone.
Yeah, because you're driving it internally. You're hitting more of the immune system even more, and they're like, "Oh shit, invaders!"
Yeah.
We're driving it down deeper into the dermal layers, and that's not good.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Once you have a staph infection, are you more likely to have it again?
When you're talking about staph.
Or whatever it may be. Yeah.
So we see this with MRSA, which is this type of staph, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. A lot of people you can be a carrier. And what's interesting is some of the reservoirs that people carry, especially like in the nasopharynx. So if people start getting repeated, they get it once and it just keeps popping up like randomly, it seems, not without, exposures. For instance, we have a very clean gym. And if someone keeps repeatedly getting it without some kind of outside thing, we're like, we just empirically won't even test for it happening. We'll give them like upiricin. It's an antibiotic salve, and have them treat the inside of their nose. That's typically where some of the reservoir.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
It's like a clear.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that can happen.
It was after once I
How often does someone have to do that? Because let's say they do that and then it goes away for a while and then they start getting them again.
Well, it depends. Did you have an exposure where you got it again? You know what I mean?
I cross-train like crazy, so it's not our gym. It's just I'm a prostitute.
And that's depending on the gym and the people there and their attention to hygiene.
Yeah, you happen to roll with one guy that he's like the filthy monster in their gym.
Well, the wrestling little tournaments are just you go look at that and it's a thing of what not to do.
It's crazy
in general.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I apologize if the person's listening. They probably caught that I told them the opposite of the truth.
I got that.
Yeah. Hello.
That's pretty funny, actually.
It is a question though, because I know someone that got one like on the kind of the side of the pec, but they don't. Like, how would you get it there? Like, if they typically wear a rash guard, and
it's usually some kind of break in the skin. It doesn't matter. I mean, we get scratched up all the time.
Sure, even a burn of some sort.
Anything that disrupts the epidermis. Yeah.
Okay. That
barrier. It can be something very minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We typically see it a lot on the hair producing parts of the skin.
Oh, why?
Look at the follicles. The follicles are an entry
because it's already
Can be, and if the
piercing.
follicle gets inflamed, it's more open to entry.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. That's all I got. Well, you got something, Liv?
Nope.
No. Anything else?
No, but we'll talk about maybe some general spine health.
Yeah,
Spinal.
We're getting into the spinal.
The spinal.
Okay? So with that, please shoot us some questions if you guys like. Obviously, we love answering them. Tournament stuff. I would love to talk more tournament stuff if people got some questions about that.
Send some videos of you rolling for Bill to break down.
And someone did. Someone let us know that they got some stuff. So I'm going to look at your page.
And
boom.
I'm, the classic entitled person. I'm like, why you got to post the other shoulder video?
Yeah. I got caught up watching Drive to Survive last night.
I understand.
Because you messaged, you're like, hey, what's up with the shoulder thing? And I was like, oh, I'll post it last night. We watched 4 episodes of Drive to Survive.
Good stuff.
Yeah, you watched that yet?
No.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
You have to watch it. The
No,
drama.
I don't have to watch anything.
No, you do.
You do.
You do. I'm going to tape your bald
It's
butt.
F1.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Okay.
We didn't even care about
I
Formula
could
One.
care less.
It's so
It's so good.
From a cinematography level, like
Cool.
if people like that stuff, it's great.
And the drama.
And she loves the drama.
I
It's
might
like a
watch.
reality show.
Yeah, sounds good. We're watching Resident Alien right now.
Oh, because Andrew told you about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he keeps telling
And
me.
it's right on. It's our level of humor. So
Okay,
so
well,
bad.
if you're going to take his recommendation, you have to take ours too.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like I'm getting pressured.
Yeah, you are. It's for your better. Okay. See y'all.
Later.